Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a pleasure to welcome everybody. And I know it's going to be a wonderful evening, an informative, an educational evening, having this unique experience to host somebody who is most unusual in our community today. There is a Gemara in Masechet Eruvin which tells us that if an individual experiences any type of difficulty, so someone is traveling and he has no one to escort him, what should he do? Ya'asok b'Torah. Let him study Torah. Chosh birosho, somebody has a terrible headache, Ya'asok b'Torah. Chosh bigrono, he has a terrible sore throat, Ya'asok b'Torah. Chosh b'meyav, terrible stomach ache, once again, you know the answer, Ya'asok b'Torah. Apparently, the Gemara suggests that if there is anything that troubles you, there is one simple remedy, one simple solution. Turn to Torah, turn to the Talmud. I would imagine today that everybody believes that there is another ache. May not be a headache, may not be a stomach ache or a throat that's bothering you, but an ache that we all sense, namely tension that might exist between the Dati community and the secular community. If we don't feel it, then there is something wrong with us. And what our guest speaker today, what she has done for the majority of her life, is to recognize that when that ails, when there is something bothering you about this socially, what she did was follows the Gemara prescription, Ya'asok b'Torah. Our speaker tonight, our very distinguished guest, has a PhD in Talmud from Hebrew University, and certainly introduced herself to the Knesset in a most unusual fashion when she began to discuss a Gemara in Masechet Ketubot, probably to the bewilderment and shock to the remaining members of the Knesset. As they panned the Knesset audience, you were able to see how certain members of the Haredi parties were totally perplexed, didn't know how to respond. But it was an incredible Kiddush Hashem, incredible sanctification of God's name. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Chaver Knesset Ruth Calderon.
מועדים לשמחה. Thank you. Wow, you're very impressive here. So many Jews in New Jersey. I lived in Livingston, it wasn't like that. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Pnina. Thank you, my host. Thank you, Rabbi. And my friends. I'm really excited to be here. And it always looks different from what you imagine when they tell you that you're going to speak in an Orthodox shul. Can I take this out? Does it still work? Even better. So I would like to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to where I am, which sometimes amazes me too. I never had any plan to be in politics. I'm still not so... I don't know. In the beginning, we used to have a picture of all the people, and I only knew about the Prime Minister and two other faces. But I'm very happy that I am in politics now. And I'd like to tell you a bit about how I got here and a little bit about what I try to do and why, in my view, the Talmud and my daily work as a politician are not exactly similar, but are very much connected. When people ask me if my life changed completely since I am in the Knesset, I say that I still work for the same boss, which is the Ribono Shel Olam, and that I think I do exactly the same work. The thing that changed dramatically are the tools with which I can work, and I must say it's easier to be a Knesset member than to raise money for a non-profit organization. and I'm sure you all know. And so for the first 25 years of my working life, I was in the non-profit world. I'll tell you the story, and then I'll tell you what I do now. And then I'll be happy to talk to you. I would rather even start talking to you, but I'll do the spiel and then we'll talk. So I grew up in Tel Aviv. I live in my parents' apartment until today. It's a little neighborhood north of the Yarkon River. Very secular. It's a neighborhood that Ben-Gurion built for soldiers that would come out of the army. Not very high up officers, which got a better neighborhood called Tzahala. Normal officers that got Maoz Aviv. It's a kind of a project with many entrances, you know, the same apartment for everyone, which was a lovely childhood, because you could go to a friend and they would have exactly the same house, you know, where the kitchen is. And the people were very good. We were a little different in the culture of the place, because all the other parents, usually the fathers, were in the army for a long time, and they were very kind of brave, heroic Israelis of the 60s. And my father got a flat from the agriculture department, okay? Because he was an entomologist. He worked with bugs, and he built the big silos in Israel and in the world. He worked with the UN in developing countries, in the Far East, in South America, in all kinds of places. So he got to come into this neighborhood, and I'm telling you this because I always felt a little bit of a gap between the school and the youth movement, the Scouts, which was very kind of national and about army and heroic stuff. And our house, my father was, how can I say, he was drafted into the Independence War, but being a soldier wasn't his best turf. And he wasn't even willing to go along with making ideal stories about 48 war, and he always told me it's much better when there's no war. He said it in worst, I wouldn't say in a synagogue. My father he grew up in Bulgaria, and so his Judaism and his man, he was a very funny man, very smart, a very funny man, and his Jewish ways from Bulgaria were extremely non-halachic. I don't know if you know anyone from Bulgarian Jewry. He used to say that his father worked in the port in Varna, and the Jewish people that worked in the port would fast when they work in Yom Kippur. They had to work, but they did not eat. And he said to me, you should know, we come from a frum family, Mishpacha Aduka, because when his father, my grandfather, would bring all kinds of animals of the sea that are not strictly kosher home, his mother would say, we are frum, so you're not going to eat it on my plates, you're going to eat it on a newspaper. So I was educated that we are a frum family. And I never know when he was joking and when he was not. And if I can sum up his Jewish education to me, he would say, Ruth Calderon, you are the daughter of the king. So noblesse oblige, we don't eat pigs. It's not something you want to do if you're the princess. And it made sense. So it was never, we didn't know of halacha or things that are allowed and not allowed. It wasn't coming from there. It was coming from some kind of nobility that he felt that he is Jewish, and it comes with noblesse oblige. The nobility obliges. My mother came from Germany just before the Nazis really started killing the Jews, but she had difficult memories from those years, and they both met in Jerusalem, and we were born to this family that was European, And my parents were a little older than the other people in the neighborhood. And so outside in school and in the Scouts, I was just like anyone else, and we were climbing the mountains of Israel and jumping the waterfalls, and we, of course, spoke Hebrew, and there was this freedom and feeling of, there was even overdoing the feeling of belonging to the country, and we knew every name, like we still do, every name of every bird and little insect, and the names of the valleys, and because there was a claim, there was a wish to feel that we are from here, we are Israelis. But when you are really from a country, you don't think what exactly is the name of the bird. This was a bird. And when you see a people that make such an effort to know birds by first name, you understand that that they don't feel completely at home. So outside I was playing the whole Zionist, secular, I went along with that and I was convinced in that. But at home there was always a little bit of a different, like a gap, like when you hear television and then a voice comes. There was a little bit of a gap between what I heard outside and what I felt inside. They didn't talk about it much. But I knew my mother came from a Hasidic family, and there was a kind of a Liebe Gott that she used to say when my brothers were in the army. And my father spoke about, I felt more Jewish at home and Israeli outside. And when I was growing up, there was a difference. You had to choose. I remember we used to go to seminars, and the instructors would say, they would put notes, Jewish, Israeli, human being, and something else, and you had to choose what you are. And I felt from the beginning that the first thing that I know about myself is that I'm Jewish. And I'm not willing to give that up just because that Israeli society is divided to Datiim v'Chilonim, and I'm not on the Datiim side. But I was on the Yehudim side, and I felt that I grew up Jewish. So everything went well about at the age of 11, which I always think is quite young, and we don't take the children seriously enough. But I think most of the important dreams and thoughts that we had were when we were about between 10 and 15. So go and talk to your children or grandchildren, because they have a lot of time to think. So I was thinking, and I thought, I want more of that thing, that Judaism that I feel at home, but where can I find it? And my parents couldn't teach me anything about it because house was full of books, many books about insects, and many books about, my father even has a beetle that is after his name, he found. Many books of general, classic reading. Between the two of them, they spoke many languages, not the same languages, so they spoke Hebrew to each other, but they both read in different languages. But there was no Mishnah, no Talmud, and nothing rabbinic or Middle Ages Jewish thought. There was a lot of Bible, because we went to school and we studied Bible all the time. And there were Bibles that you get when you finish school. You have one Bible, then when you finish whatever, you have another. Then in the army, in the beginning, the end of Tirunut, you get a Bible, then the end of... So you have, every home in Israel has like 5 little Bibles that nobody can read after the age of 30 without reading glasses, but you have them all. But I wanted the other books. I went to school, I asked my teacher, she said she doesn't know, I should go to the library. I went to the library, she said they don't hold Talmud there. I should go to the public library. I went to the public library. When they didn't have it, I began to be really intrigued. What is it in those books that they keep away from us? It must be really good. And again, I tried to, my mother became a bit worried that I'm going to go to the other side and become so religious that I won't eat at home. Those days, in the 70s, there were some young people from our neighborhood that became dati and disappeared. They didn't live with us anymore. They went to Jerusalem, came back with the whole outfit and a lot of children. And my mother was worried that this is going to happen to me. And I told her, I want to study, I want to know what it is, but I want to stay with you. This is my community. These are the values that you taught me, and I really appreciate. I had the good fortune of growing up with wonderful parents. I don't want to go. I just want to know. And again, I was too young to put it into words, but I started understanding that we were educated to be ignorant. That there was an ideology of ignorance, and they took away that piece of Jewish history and heritage from us because they were afraid it is viral, and that if you catch the virus, it will take you the whole way. And so the first educators who did amazing, good, wonderful things in Israeli culture, and I appreciate them and I'm grateful to them, but in that sense, maybe because of their own issues with the old country of their own, with their parents or their grandparents, they took away a whole piece of who we are. And I thought that I cannot be who I am if I don't know where I came from. It's like not knowing your grandmother. Even if she's not so nice, you want to know her. Because as we all know, gradually we are becoming our mothers, and then we're becoming our grandmothers. So you might as well know what to expect. And when something is taken away from you, I was angry. I felt this is not fair. This is not something for other people to decide what I know. After I know something, I can make choices what I want to go on learning and how I want to live it. But when I don't know, ignorance is always weakness, and knowledge is always power. And it doesn't mean that once I learn something, I become it. Anyway, I said that to myself, but there was no place to study. That was the age when I saw Yentl for the first time, and I was really envious and how she managed to get into the yeshiva. The yeshivot were something I was removed from it twice. Once because I'm a woman, and once because I'm secular. So there was no chance I will ever be able to pass the entrance. And it looked so romantic and so intriguing, but I knew there's no way to get in there. Maybe Barbara Streisand, but I will not pass as a man. And so I started going to places to study, and this is a very long story. Like in real life, I had no plans to make a project of this or to be in the Knesset. I just wanted to know. And I went to the synagogue. We have 3 synagogues in the neighborhood, one Yemenite, one Sephardi, and one Ashkenazi. Of course, we usually don't go to either. In Yom Kippur, in our neighborhood, hundreds of people come, maybe thousands, and we all stand outside. Nobody walks in, because those synagogues did not communicate with us. Women go up where the fans are, and you hear gossip about people you don't know, which is lost gossip. Not interesting to hear stories about people you don't know. And the Torah is far down there, and behind the curtains, and I couldn't find myself there. I went to other places that educate secular people, like Gesher, and in the beginning I was really, again, very moved, and then I felt the manipulation. I felt that they are not clean with me. They're not just letting me study. They are they know where I should end up. And I did not appreciate that. I was maybe 16 then. I didn't want them, they didn't need to do anything. I was there because I wanted to come. But they had the right and the wrong, and exactly what you should be if you study this. So again, I went home, and like birds make their nest with little pieces that they find. I felt like I'm collecting all kinds of little knowledge and pieces to try and make my own home. And you shouldn't be sorry for me, but I felt very lonely in that sense. There was no one to talk to because the secular people were threatened by what's happening to me. I was called the Dosit of the class, believe it or not. I mean, only when I came to Jerusalem I understood that they see me as the frightening secular, and they see me as the Dosit, so you always stay lonely in the middle. And that was how it went. I really stayed. It was a very long journey. Until one day in the army, I served as an educator of a tank unit, which in the Israeli army, I think only the Russian army has politruk, like in Israel, that you have an educator. For the soldiers, what you usually do is you bring lectures, the soldiers fall asleep, and you listen to the lecture. You put the soldiers in the shade, so they're happy. The person that gives the lecture is happy because it's a miluim for him, and I study. So one day a man came, Ari Elon came, and he gave a class in Talmud. And I was amazed. I felt I'm like the yoga people say that they are. Levitate?
Levitate.
Flying.
Yeah.
And after the lecture, I went to him and I said, where can I learn like this? And he said there is a place in the north called Oranim, belongs to the kibbutz movement, and this is the way they study there. And the next morning, I took my bag. It's not educational. I hitchhiked. It's not allowed now. I went there and I said I'm beginning to study. And I thought I'll only study for a year, just to get out of this terrible ignorance. But the smart professor that got me in said, write yourself down for academic studies. Maybe you will want the credits. And I did end up studying 5 years there. Did my bachelor's in Bible and philosophy and Jewish thought. And while I was doing that, I felt that I'm really, this is what I was looking for. This is what I needed to be myself. And when the Talmud was opened to me, it was Mark Hirschman that maybe you know here. He's an American Jewish Israeli. And he made us learn Rashi and Tosfot and everything by heart. And it was very kind of hard with us, and I loved it, and I felt at 21, I thought I'm mature, that this book is really about me. I felt I'm reading about myself in it, and it is talking about the things that I'm asking myself about, and decisions that I have to make now, and how can I live without it, and how can I make my community, my parents, my friends, how can I bring it there? I felt like I need to make some kind of tzinorot, some kind of pipes, to bring this to the people in Tel Aviv, because the people that usually study it will not do art and film and things that I think this should be going to, and the people that do those things don't know the book. So it's like, I really remember the day in class that I thought about the pipes. How can I bring it back home with me? And I finished the bachelor's. I wanted to go on to master's. And my teacher, the Meir Ayali, wrote a letter for the professors in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem Talmud department is a universe of its own. Everyone except for me had a beard. And they all came from a few yeshivot. And they had their own schedule, it was a very special kind of group. They lived in the university, but didn't obey all the rules of the university. Chanukah, you go home early, all kinds of things. And I came to study. I was really the only, many things. And I looked strange to them. I remember one of them was kind of polite enough to come and to say, Ruth, I'm not going to speak to you, I'm not going to sit next to you, please don't be offended. I looked at him like, why do you want to inform me? I mean, how would I even know if you sat next to me or not? But I didn't understand what is this is a part of something that I don't get. Then they had this thing of reading the Talmud. So, for example, you say Eruvin Nun Vav, and then they don't say where they are in the page. And like 20 minutes, I'm trying to find where they're reading. And it's a kind of all kinds of shtikim of to show that they are very good. One day, Professor Zussman, who was the fear of the Talmud department, he was an amazing, he is, Refuah Shlema for him, he's not so well, he's very, very smart and strong man. He said to me, Ms. Calderon, Gveret Calderon, please see me after this class. And I was so frightened. And I went to his office and he said, Ms. Calderon, I want to tell you that these students that try to frighten you have studied many years in yeshiva, but I should inform you that they also played a lot of basketball. And if you will be serious with your studies, in 2 years you can know everything that they know. And he kind of gave me kept my back, and it's amazing how sometimes 3 sentences of someone can completely change the way you feel. And I really made the point of trying to learn everything they know. But while we were studying, I understood that what interested me in the Talmud is not what interests them. Not the professors that only want to know if it's the manuscript with the Yud and the Vav, and it was really a tzaddik, but the arm of the tzaddik fell and now we have a Yud. That's, I mean, okay, they're scientists, they want to investigate the Ur text, the best text that you have for manuscript for the Talmud, but I wanted to talk about the content. I came for the content. And other people read it as religious halakha, which is not exactly what the Talmud does, but it was done with it, and I was not that there for that either. I wanted to intimately go into the text and understand what's there about my life, about life of a human being, because the Talmud is so full of philosophical big questions of human life, almost about everything in my life. I learned there, and there were such huge insights that were not relevant in class. And again, I understood that I want Bet Midrash. I don't want just lectures of how to investigate manuscripts, which is an important thing to know. And Baruch Hashem, after you finish the PhD, you know that you can do that. But I wanted to use it to bring out something else. And I went to the Hartman Bet Midrash for a few years, and I think in the 4th year, I said to my Chavrota, let's open a Bet Midrash for secular people too. We are always coming as guests. We are always coming, it is our own culture, but we don't feel at home. We feel like we are visiting someone else, and the someone else always has a program of what should become of us. Like lekarev, lechazek, there are all kinds of verbs of what you do to a secular person that comes to study. You never leave them the same way they came. They always have to be upgraded. And I want to be upgraded, but I don't want someone else to decide in which way I'm upgraded. And now I think, as a grown-up, that there was never before a Bet Midrash, that non-halachic people had part in running it, not just coming to be educated. And like I feel about the Jewish culture and being, that I want to be in it at home. And I want to try to do my best to do it right, to do it in a Hasidic way of what I'm supposed to be, not what someone else thinks that I should be. In the same way, I wanted to do the study, and also I wanted to study more texts, not just Talmud and Rishonim v'Achronim. I wanted to bring in Bialik and Brenner and Gordon and things that affected me, and Leah Goldberg and poetry, and I wanted the method of Bet Midrash that was, it's like finally, like the ugly duckling, finally I found a place where I belong, and I like studying like this. And I'm not the person to sit for many hours in someone else lectures. That's not the kind of, I need dialogue. And I love studying the Kol Ram, studying aloud. Coming, like letting someone come into my thoughts, like to take a tour inside of my head, and then I can go into her head and take a tour there. And it's so fascinating how Bet Midrash, I think, is the best pedagogia, how do you say that in English, in the world. And it's a bit similar to kindergarten. And then in kindergarten you can play with the chavruta that you choose, and you can play with whatever, you can move from station to station. Then all your life you have to sit and take Ritalin and listen to professors. We didn't have Ritalin at that time, but that's what happens to the children. And then when you're old enough, you can go back to a kind of a kindergarten of Bet Midrash, and again study with people and do what you need. Take books if you need other books. In the same world of Bet Midrash, there are like 20 different classes being done by the people themselves, and I thought that's so beautiful. But still, I wanted to use this method, but I wanted to bring in film and books and everything that I ever learned to bring it in, like the scholars, like the rabbis did when they study, and they bring in things they learned from Babylon and from Persia, and they kind of, like in a cake, you lekapel et ze prima, you bring it in and you make it again yourself. There's always this rub between cultures, and the place where cultures touch each other is the place where new things are happening. And so again, make it short, I did establish Elul, which is now 25 years old, and I did it together with Moti Baror, who came from the yeshiva. And we were young and we had a lot of time, so we had long hours of talk of, do you say Birkat Torah when you study Bialik, or do you not? And how far do you go? And afterwards we had children and we talked less about that and studied more. We were more tired. And I was there in Elul for some 7 years. We ran it together, directed it together. Again, I still didn't know that something big is happening, but afterwards, out of Elul came, today there are about 100 places of study in Israel of non-halachic, non-religious people that want to reclaim classic Jewish texts because they need it in their life. Not for academic reasons, and not because somebody told them that they have to, but because of Torah Lishma, because you want to live well, and in order to live in a rich way, we are thirsty for that. But then I didn't know that, and then Rabin was assassinated, and there was a lot of tension in the Bet Midrash, not only in ours, there was gossip, there was talk, and I felt, after I kind of admired Jerusalem and the kibbutz movement, I felt I want to go back to my hometown, to people that I share with them normal ideas, like you do not kill a prime minister when you don't agree with him. And I did come back to Tel Aviv. When I left Tel Aviv many years before, Judaism was something very not cool. It's like it was a turn-off. When I came back to Tel Aviv, something happened in Israel. Maybe it's New Age, and maybe it's the fact that many young people go and travel in the Far East and India, and they understand religiosity, not only the establishment of Rabbanut in Israel. Anyway, I came back and I opened Alma, and many people came. It was very easy to bring people in. And in Alma, I focused on artists, on people who write poetry, do the film, or do television. People, again, Israel is so small that you can actually meet the people who are making culture, who are affecting the public space, of what you hear on radio, see on television, see the ads all around you. And they did come, and I was at Alma for 18 years, and I'm happy to say that I saw the shift in the Israeli culture, that Judaism and Israelism integrated for the Jewish people. Still, of course, is the Israeli identity, but it's not anymore either or, much less. And study of Torah is not only something that belongs to them, but is also, first of all, a place that we are reclaiming something that we need, and then on that ground, there's a place to meet religious people that love the same text. And when you study the same text, so many of the differences disappear. I remember once I was doing my daily page, and I waited for a pharmacy to open at 4. And when you do your daily page, you always need more time, and at night you always have to finish and you can't see it anymore. So it was like 20 to 4, so I did a little bit of study. And there was an ultra-Orthodox Haredi man also waiting for the pharmacy. A man that would never talk to me, and I would never talk to him. But he saw me studying, and it bothered him. Like, what am I seeing? So after like 7 minutes, he tried to look what Masechet Ani. And after a few minutes, he comes to me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Daf Yomi." And I went on studying. And again, he came and he said, "So, איפה את אוחזת? Where are you studying?" And I said, and he says, "Can I test you?" So I had a, oh my God, I need a hand. I was ambivalent. On one hand, who is he to test me? Why does he? On the other hand, I couldn't resist. Because when you study, especially when you're on Daf Yomi, and I was not Daf Yomi with the whole world, I was my own pace, you're dying to hear someone else on the places that you don't understand. What does someone else think? And I have a person here, and he might say something interesting. I think he also thought, what is she doing with this page? I have to listen. Anyway, we started studying. It was surreal. We started studying, and it was really very nice and interesting. Of course, we studied in a different way. Then the pharmacy opened, and we were like, forgot what we came to do. And then when we did take whatever we needed, again, we disappeared with no, it was like, there was nothing else to, it was a very deep friendship, and then again, he went to his own world and I went to my own world. But that taught me, and it happened to me again in an airplane, you know, in El Al. Quite a big percentage of the people are wearing black and white. And again, when you walk with the Steinsatz, everybody sees you. You can't hold it. It was the big Steinsatz. So it's like, you sit, and there's a lot of waiting in airports. And again, someone came to me, and we started studying, and then he gave me a note of his name in Yiddish, with all the vowels in the middle, and where he lives in Jerusalem. And of course, we never ever talked with each other again, but I understood there that the Talmud is a magical place of meeting, of getting together, because you are actually literally standing on common ground. This is the place. For me, it's the Talmud. It can be other great books, but it is the place that we both really respect and love. Now I'm making a big jump. The Jewish, what is it called, Renaissance in Israel, which is all these non-religious places that study, was very poor in practical funding. And we, most of the time, were funded by American Jews that thought that pluralism is a good thing and that Jews should study in Israel. But I was so always מתוסכלת. I can speak Hebrew בכלל here. I'll try. I was so frustrated that the government, the state, doesn't see us. It's as if we don't exist. There's a lot of money. There's 2.5 today. I learned to tell you 2.5 billion shekel is going each year to religious Jewish life, but none of it goes to any of the communities that are not Orthodox. And I don't even know if Orthodox here is the Orthodox that is accepted there. When they say Orthodox, it's them. And I was upset because this is the Jewish state, and we are Jews, and we have our needs in Jewish life. We also have children that are born. There's Brit or Simchat Vat, there's Bar Mitzvah and Bat Mitzvah, there's marriages, there's divorces, there's the calendar. We have Sukkot, and we have Tikkun El Shavuot, and we have Rosh Hashanah, and there's nothing. You can only fundraise in America. And after many years that I tried to explain that to the people in the Ministry of Education or Religion, I understood that instead of barking outside the door, you might as well just go in and talk to the people inside, because many times it's not because they are bad, it's because they don't hear us. They don't know that we exist. And today I'm talking about a very big number of people and communities that just want to live their Jewish life. And thank God and thank Yair Lapid that somehow history went that way, that there was a new party called Yesh Atid, which Pnina is our American friends of. And he invited me to come in. Now, I thought what most of you, I guess, think about politicians. And I thought they will eat me up in a week. And I was afraid, and I also worked at the National Library as head of education and culture, a most amazing job where Rothschild gave the money and I spent it on anything I wanted. And with sellers of books of, amazing treasures of the National Library. But after a lot of thought, I said, yes, I will come. And since then, I'm trying to do the same thing inside. So one example of what I'm doing, because I don't know how we are with time, I'll start with the end and go to the middle. What I'm doing today is a project of Shemitah. This year started the year of Shemitah. Until this year, I never knew that there is Shemitah, never touched my life. I knew, somehow I understood that vegetables become less good and more expensive. But it had no meaning, no kiyumi, no existential meaning in my life or in anyone around me. And this time what I am trying, and again, this time 105 million shekel is spent on Shemitah, and I try to go into to learn what's happening with the money. I'm not sure that I can give you it's very vague. So what I thought of doing, and this is an idea that came up in the secular and pluralistic Batei Midrash, is to try to take seriously Shmitat Ksafim, not just Shmitat Karkaot. Because in Israel, only 2% of the people have agriculture. And not all of them are enthusiastic about Shemitah, and that is done anyway. So Shmitat Ksafim, we know that the concept in the Bible is that if someone has debt, in ancient times, he would have to sell his land and become, to work, he should, like a slave for the person that bought the land, and then his children become slaves, and the Bible does not like slavery. And if I understood in a simple way, if I can say what Judaism is to not be a slave of anyone else but Ribono Shel Olam. So they say that if someone is in debt, after 7 years in the Shnat Shemitah, you forgive the debt. They tried to do that for a few years, and the Jewish community wasn't thrilled about giving up the debt, and people would not loan, because there will be frayerim, as we say in Hebrew. I give you a loan and then I have to forgive. And Hillel came up with the prosbol, and I think for many generations it was not done. Now the problem of people in debt is getting even much worse. In this country and in Israel, there are people that take a loan, and loans are very nice to you when you take them, but when you have to give them back, it's very vicious, and people are losing everything they have. I'm even talking about soldiers that took a phone program and couldn't pay, and now the phone company is taking their army wages and they don't have a penny or a cent to live, or a shekel. So what I'm trying to do, and we are in the middle of this, is invite up to 5,000 families. I hope we'll be able to do it. This is something that will happen on Shnat Shmita, but can go on happening afterwards. Invite families to go into a program of rehabilitation financially. There are non-profit organizations that have been doing this work for many years. They work with the family for a year until the family is able to balance itself and to earn more than they spend. It's a lot of, it's like diet. It's a very easy to say, very difficult to do. But the families that do get to a point where they're balanced, and the only thing that is still not letting them come back to normal life is the debt. And you know, I don't know how it is here, but in Israel, they take away the credit, and they have an X bank. The bank doesn't let them do anything, and the whole family lives in shame, and it's very difficult, and there's no way to get out of it. So if there are families that finish that process of a year, and they did it successfully, we go with each one of them separately to whoever they owe the money. It can be a bank or electric company, phone company, whatever. And we do debt settlement. The family pays back a third with no interest in a way that they can handle the payments. The company forgives a very big percent of the debt because, and that is possible because in any case it is called lost debt. They didn't put it in their books because they're not expecting to get it back. And we, the people of Israel, as an act of solidarity, are trying to raise the gap money between what is forgiven and what the family pays. And our hope is this year to let 5,000 families get out of that and come back into normal life. Now, thank you. Now, someone there, they're happy with the idea. Now, what, thank you all. What I'm trying to say here is two things. One is that you are, of course, invited to take part if somebody wants the mitzvah of Shmitat Ksafim, which is a very rare mitzvah. If you don't have land in Israel, you can do Shemitah, and you'll make a family very happy. The other thing that I want to say, that I want this for, is to explain to Jewish people in Israel and in the world that the Bible is not only something that you learn in Hebrew school or you daven on Shabbat. It's a political option. It's a meaningful way of life. It's not disconnected from our everyday life. It has ideals and even tools of life that you can put into when you are in politics. It enables me to do it in a big scale, but we can do it in a small scale, each one of us, and to take the Bible and the Talmud seriously, not as something that is, that is like a hobby, that we live a normal American or Israeli life, and then on Saturday and holidays we do something, we sit in the sukkah. But to try and take that into the most professional place that we are when we work, and make it, today our children in Israel make us with the garbage, recycle and have a compost bin near the, my girls take everything we eat and they put whatever is right for the compost. Now the compost bin is Pach Shmita, only they don't know it. So half of the people are having Pach Shmita, so fruit and vegetables of the year of Shmita, you don't throw to the garbage, you put in a special bin. And the other half of the people are collecting fruit and vegetables, only they don't know that. But recycling, that is something so new, or sustainability, that is something that is so new, or banks that give loans in Africa, that is something that is cutting edge in being today a progressive person, is biblical. Only nobody told us. באמת, Shmita, I think today in what we all do in sustainability and health, Shmita is like much more progressive than that. Because I think that is one of the worst sicknesses today of the world of more and more buying, and you know the economy is working on making us shop and buy. And Shmita for me is also the option of a year of less buying more things and getting more things and achieving more and more kind of letting go. Harpu, ud'u, ki ani Hashem. To let go, to come home earlier, to make sleeping bags for iPhones, for cell phones, and let them rest, and not be online all the time and available all the time. And again, this is an idea that is biblical before they had cell phones, but so relevant to living a meaningful life today. In some ways, I feel very fortunate to be a politician in Israel, where you can actually legislate things like that. There's another legislation that I'm working on, a legislation of Shabbat in the public space, where together with a member of Knesset Elazar Stern, we try to make it less shopping and more culture. So not all the culture that I would like to open, I guess all of you would be enthusiastic about, because it's not only synagogues. I would hope to open all the community centers that are closed in Israel on Shabbat, because it's Shabbat, and let people that don't go to synagogues have a place to study something, to do some neshama yetera, to open their soul to something that is not every day, and to let the children play there instead of taking them to the mall to pass the day of the weekend, Shabbat. So this is like two examples of what it is to try to be a politician that is aiming to make what I learned from Torah a reality. And one of those things is to be here and to tell you that the way I see it, I am working in the Knesset as your member of Knesset too, not just of Israeli citizens, because the relationship between us, the Jews that live in Israel, and the Jews that live in other places in the world, I think is crucial for both sides, but for sure for Israel, to understand that we are not just the people who live around us, but we have such a huge family and people that we belong to, and we are forgetting or drifting apart. And I think many members of Knesset don't know what you need from us, what you want, how you would want Israel to be. And we should answer to you too, and listen to you too, in order to make the state of the Jews what it is supposed to be. So many times when things are done by the government, and I'm part of the coalition, I feel embarrassed, and I feel that nobody thinks of the Jews that are going to pay the price. For example, to not להרחיק עדותנו, not to talk about what happens between America and Israel today, but with the Turkish Jews, when there was this thing between the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the Turkish Prime Minister, and he embarrassed him, I thought of a community in Istanbul that I go back to. We study together a lot. And I think, does he know that they are going to pay such a high price in going to synagogue, in going to school, in being in the street, because he found it necessary to do something to shame the minister of the Turkish ambassador. And in that sense, I think that this is something that I hope will, with the people of Yesh Atid, Dov Littman, that is very much from here and understands it, and others, to try to explain to the other Israeli politicians that we are not alone in the world on both sides. We are not alone, we have support, and we are not alone, we are responsible not only for ourselves. So I know I didn't get to the text yet, but I'm talking about listening to you, so maybe we'll stop and give some time to talk, or it's as long as you give me. We'll go through it. I chose quite a wild short story, but don't come to me. I didn't write it. It's in the Talmud, and there is a little thing in there that I wanted to, because I understood that bringing non-religious or secular scholars is not the thing you always do. I took it even further and brought something a bit. It's you see. Oh, you have 2 pages, and the other one is in English. I'll read it once in the Hebrew, as we say for the music, and then we'll study it quickly in English. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, you see on the first page it's מסומן. רבי חייא בר אשי הווה רגיל, כל עידן דהווה נפל להפי, הווה אמר, הרחמן יצילני מיצר הרע. יום אחד, שמעתן הוא דבית הוא, אמרה, מקדיה כמה שני דפריש לימיני, מה הייתה מכה אמר אחי? יום אחד, הווה כגריס בגינתי, כשתה נפשה חלפה ותן יקמי. אמר לה, מן את? אמרה, אנא חירותה. דהדרי מיומה, טבעה. אמרה לי, הייתי נהיה לי להחרומנה דרש צוציתה. שבר הזל, הייתי נהיה לי. כי אתה לביתי, הבקשה גרה לביתו תנוע. סליק וקרייתיו בגבי. אמרה לי, מי היי? אמר לה, הכי והכי הווה מעשה. אמרה לי, אנא הווי, לא אשגח בה, הדעה ולסימני. אמר לה, אנא מי על איסור היקבני. That's the story, now the English. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi, what I want to talk about is the term hava ragil, he used to. In all the places in the Talmud, when someone does a religious deed out of regularity, out of habit, without feeling it today, without choosing it this moment, something bad is going to happen to him or to others. The rabbis don't like halakha that becomes a habit, that becomes routine. On one hand, they are the people who are writing halakha, and they want us to get into a habit. You wake up in the morning, you do the right leg, the left leg, they are building the habit, and in the other hand, they are writing the story to say that habit is very dangerous. It's something they always do, like petting a cat. They do it with the fur and then against the fur. They teach you something and then they show you that it's not always so. So bear in your mind that habit is the issue of this story. Rabbi Chia bar Ashi used to prostrate himself in prayer and say, may the merciful one save me from the evil inclination. So he used to pray every day. It doesn't even say every day, but he used to. So it's not only in very special occasions. He used the extra special prayer of lying completely on the ground with your hands like hands and legs, completely like in Yom Kippur, but we do a sublime version of it. The real, like the Muslims do, but even more. All your body on the ground and pray. Now, when you do Nefilat Apayim, this, what's called here, prostration, prostrate, it is considered to be like the red phone to Ribbonot Olam. When you have to urgently pray for something and there's no other way, you do that and you pray and you're heard. But Rabbi Chia Barashi used to do it. What does it mean? He did it all the time. He did it many times. He made the habit of using the red phone. Now, there's already some kind of critical thinking here about his doing. Now, why is he praying for the merciful one to save him from the evil inclination? What's evil inclination? Yetzer hara. Usually Yetzer hara about sex in a manner that is not educational, not with his, not in his marriage. So we already know that he's challenged with evil inclination, and what he does about his wishes is to pray every day, Nefilat Apayim, to God to save him from Yetzer hara. One day, his wife overheard him. So his wife doesn't know of his problem and doesn't know that he prays every day. She went to the market one day. She forgot the keys. She came back to the house and suddenly she sees her husband lying on the door and yelling, "May the merciful one save me from evil inclination." And she says, given that for several years he has abstained from me, why is he saying that? I never heard that he has problems with evil. I didn't know that why didn't he come to me? I mean, the wife believes that he's so holy that he doesn't come to her anymore because he became such a tzaddik that he's beyond sex. But now she hears that he is challenged with evil inclination and she never heard of it. And she becomes suspicious. So what would one do if she sees in her husband's emails that he is asking for help with his evil inclination? What would you do? Men, please feel like women for a minute. Oh, you can also do it if you saw your wife's text. What would you do? Follow them. So there is the feeling of, so if he's not doing it with me, he must be doing it with someone else. Huh? We have to start following him. What else are the options of doing something? To test him. How do you test one? To tempt. Oh, you know too much. Given that for several years he has abstained from me, why is he saying that? So she has this in her mind and she's now suspicious. One day, he was standing in his garden. I don't know if you do that in school in America, but in Israel, when the spring comes, the children say to the teacher, "Bo na'aseh shiur b'chutz." Let's study outside, which you never study, נכון? You never end up studying outside. So when the rabbi is taking his stool to the garden, it might be that he wants some vitamin, whatever, but it also might be that he doesn't really want to study. I mean, it's interesting that one day he was studying in the garden. He is studying in the garden. She adorned herself, so she dressed up. It's a kind of Halloween. She adorned herself, passed by, and came before him. I was walking. I'm a bit embarrassed that you are taping all of this, so please take it out afterwards. But I was walking today. There was a parade, so I walked from the east back to where I stay on the west side, and I saw all the Halloween that I don't know how to react to that. And I saw Victoria's Secret, and I didn't know if that is also Halloween, because thought that the wife of Rav Chia Bar Ashi, where she went to get dressed, she adorned herself, passed by and came before him. So he's standing in the garden, and she's walking with her new costume up and down. She took off her wife kisui rosh and the wife costume, the very kind of decent and modest, and she wore this new, let her hair down, wore this new Victoria's Secret clothes and walked up and down before him. He said to her, "Who are you?" So what do we understand? He doesn't recognize her. That happens to men in the classic text in Judaism. Like Yaakov, I mean, how could you not know? But he doesn't, it's interesting that sometimes people that live with us at home, we don't see them. Like when you have a new haircut, 4 hours and if you won't say what's new, no idea. So she walks and he says, "Who are you?" The Aramaic is, "What are you?" So he asks, "Are you a human being? Are you a ghost? What are you?" And she says to him, "I am libertina, I am cheruta." Cherut in Hebrew is freedom, liberty. Cheruta, aleph at the end of the word is, I am the Statue of Liberty. I'm freedom. Freedom, cheruta, is a name of the most famous prostitute in Babylon. That's what Rashi says. So everybody, it's like Madonna, everybody knows the name, cheruta. So she says, this wife that was always very covered and very modest and didn't even think and, did the housework. Suddenly, because she caught him praying, she is angry and jealous, and she finds the most famous prostitute in Babylon in herself. She dresses like her, and she says to her husband, "I am cheruta. I just came back from a tour in the world." That's an English difficult word. Teva'a in proposition. In Aramaic it says teva'a. Litboa is to insist, it's to sue, and it's also to take someone in a sexual act, like litboa. They don't give details. She said to him, so after what they did in the garden, he doesn't know that it's his wife. He thinks that he's doing it with a prostitute, someone strange to him. After they do it, she says to him, "Bring me that pomegranate from the top of the tree." See, it's a Sukkot story. There's a pomegranate. Bring me the pomegranate. Why does she want the pomegranate? Evidence and like a payment. It's like Tamar in some way. He wants... So he jumps up and brought it to her. Now, I would imagine that when they were married, and she would say, "Please bring me pomegranate," he wouldn't jump up and bring her. This kind of energy that he suddenly got is because of all this masquerade. So it is a Halloween story. He jumped up and brought it to her. Now when he gets back with the pomegranate, there's no one. She disappeared. When he came home, his wife was lighting the stove. It's beautiful how it's written, his wife. We know it's the same woman, but in his eyes, there was the wife, and then he went out and met this strange woman, had sex with her, or not. Some Rishonim say that he only tva'ah and didn't really do it. You can choose what happened in the garden. But when he comes back home, it's the wife again. She's dressed as the wife again, and she's lighting the oven. The oven is a symbol in all storytelling. The woman that is lighting the fire, the oven of the time of the rabbis is in the center of the house. It's a big oven. You sleep around it, you cook in it, you bake in it. It's kind of the heart of the house, and it's also a symbol of the woman. I don't know if in America you say that, but in England, when someone is pregnant, they say she has in the oven. So it's a symbol of all sides of a woman, the side of food and life and bearing children and being the center of the home, and it's also a symbol of fire. So she's lighting the fire. He went and sat inside it. He sits in the burning fire oven. She says to him, "What is this about? Why are you burning yourself?" He said, "Such and such happened." So now, from the beginning of the story, this is the first moment that they speak to each other. He was suffering from his evil inclination. He never came to her. He went to God to ask for help, and he would do the Filat Paim every day. When she understood that he has a problem, she never went to him. She went to trap him or act as if she's someone else. So in all this story, there's a lot of religious deeds, but there's no dialogue between human beings to ask, what is the problem? Why are you not talking to me? So now only when he's in the fire killing himself, he is giving her his confession and saying, such and such happened. I went out, I studied in the garden. It's years now that I have this problem, and suddenly Cheruta, the famous prostitute, came, and I did it with her, and now I'm going to, there's no way out of it. It's a sin, and I'm going to burn myself. So she says to him, "It was I. You don't have to burn yourself. You did nothing wrong. It was I, and I came as Cheruta." And also she says to him, "I have Cheruta in me. If this is what you want, we can stay together. Let's meet each other in another way, in another side." She went through a process here by the jealousy and the hurt, and she found in herself a different energy of seducing her husband. But he says the tragic answer, "But in any case, my intention was to transgress." In Hebrew, in Aramaic, "Ana miha la'isur ha'ikavne." What I wanted is the isur. It doesn't help me that it was you. If it was you, I wanted something else. He doesn't hold the hand that she's giving him, and he kills himself, and the Talmud says that he died, maybe not then, but in that death. And it's, I think, a very tragic story about, thank God it's not a man today, but men of the rabbinic time, this split between the good woman and the bad woman, and the difficulty to integrate between them. But the reason I brought it today was more than that, to talk about the habit, and to say that sometimes when Orthodox people look at secular people, Orthodox Jews look at secular Jews, you look at us as people that are not doing halakha, and that we are not educated, and there's a lot of, I feel that many times there's a lot of kind of concept about secular Jews that we are not serious, bottom line. And I want to say that the Talmud itself taught me that sometimes the Orthodox community itself needs to be careful of the habit of halakha, that you're so used to doing the things that you're supposed to do in the way that you're supposed to do, that you miss the religious moment. And sometimes it is the people that are outside of the habit that take it much more seriously. That because we don't do it all the time, not all of us and not every time, but I just want to kind of take the Talmud back to the community that is, and I'm saying this in a grateful way, keeping the tradition for all of us. In many ways, things that you do, and not all the Jews in the world do. And if you wouldn't do it, nobody would do it. And I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, don't let us not forget that the habit that is keeping us the treasures is sometimes the habit that is making us miss the essence of the halakha or the religion itself. And so, if I can try and say it in a simple way, we need each other. Maybe you need some vacations to be non-halachic. And maybe we need some vacations to be halachic, because it's not easy to always invent, so how am I going to do Sukkot? Sometimes it's good to have the Sukkah from last year and not build it every time from scratch. But just if we can kind of soften the way that we think about each other and talk about each other, I think if there is a problem, the story tells us it's much better to talk to each other than to go and look for help in the heavens or in the earth. And what the storyteller is showing them here is that you don't have to go to God, you could go to your wife. So thank you very much for the opening. Thank you, and I'm here for questions. Would you take questions?
Any questions?
Please introduce yourself. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Ed Seltzer, and I'm holding your book, Bride for a Night, which changed my perspective on the Talmud extensively. I'd like to thank you, first of all. I'm curious, though, as to why you use the device of storytelling as you did tonight to bring the point across. And the other question that I could not help but ask was, why this photograph on the cover of at least the English version?
Thank you for reading it. It just came out. It's called The Bride for One Night.
The photograph is Ruth Orkin's An American
In Italy,
from 1946, I think it was.
right? So I'm telling the story because for most of the, first of all, because that's how I study, but for the most of the community that I study with don't know these stories. And slowly I learned that also the people that learn in yeshiva skip the stories. And I think the stories are amazing. They are such good art. And usually they shake me and they teach me a new way to live. So to tell the story is a kind of way to not, I don't like to go to the bottom line and say, so what does it come to teach us? Because it's a piece of art. It's not a lesson. So what I do in the book is I give the story in Aramaic, in translation, then I tell the story, and then I say my thoughts about the story. The question of the picture, thank you for asking that. The Hebrew version is different, but when JPS asked me to do it in English, first of all I said that I want to choose the cover. And when they really came up with the cover, it was this Chanukiah with Remoni, it was very, I didn't want it. And I took this picture of this amazing photographer. It was in the 50s or 46. She had a whole series of an American woman in different sites in Rome, in Italy. And in this picture, the big picture is an American woman walking in the street in Italy, and there are many men whistling at her, and one on a Vespa, and a few talking. She's alone, she's the only woman, and she walks in a way that is a little bit afraid, and on the other hand, enjoying it. And I read Ruth, what's her name? Orkin, saying, because some feminists said that it's not a feminist picture because she's threatened by the man, and she said, I really enjoyed myself, and I even had a date with the one on the Vespa. So I chose this picture both because I have it on my desk and I love it, and because it is very similar to the feeling I have in Talmud study. I'm usually the only woman on the street, when I used to study. Today, Baruch Hashem, there are so many wonderful scholars, but it was usually my feeling. I'm alone in the street, but I really enjoy it. So that was my choice.
So I'm Tzvi Zahavi. I think you're doing enormously important work, and I thank you for it. A lot of people here have studied Talmud for a lot of years, men and women. But we realize that the Talmud is 99% from the perspective of men. So my question, it's a big question, is how do you deal with that?
I would say 100%. I mean, it's written by men, in a conversation with men, in a world that is chauvinist. I'll tell you how I deal with it. And I am a feminist, but I'm a feminist that was raised by a Sephardi father. There was nothing feminist in my family. I mean, my mother was a feminist, but the life was very chauvinist. And I don't think it's right. I didn't appreciate it in my father, but I loved him. And so I understand the Talmud because I lived in such a world myself, that my father was working and had a PhD. Both my brothers had a PhD. My mother never went to study. And part of my wish in my own study was to, I remember when I traveled, my mother always wanted to travel and my father always traveled. So when I travel, I feel that I'm with her, that she's coming with me. When I did my PhD, I felt both of us did the PhD. So I understand that the culture and the heritage that we received is chauvinist. It's chauvinist to women, and it's chauvinist to non-Jews. It's not all of it is the values that I believe in today, but it's mine. It's like my father. I love it. My father was very funny. I told you before. He would do terrible things, and I would be really angry with him. And then he would call up and he said, "What can I forgive you?" Okay. So with the Talmud also, I'm not expecting the Talmud to be feminist, democratic, and human rights. It's not, but it's ours. So the thing that might differentiate between us is that when I get to a place when it's really bad in my eyes, I am angry with it. And I'm not receiving it all, with no questions. I don't think that's a serious way for me to, like with my father. I respect him, I love him, but I'm not going to live like him. Some of the things should change. But I'm not angry when I see it. That's who they are. But we are responsible to be who we are. And it can't, in the places when they're not fair, they're just not fair. Now, I had two big brothers, so most of my youth I wanted to go play with the boys, where I had to go do the dishes and they went to do fun things. In some ways, going to the Talmud department is the same thing. And going to the Knesset is also the same thing. But I'm not angry at them. I just want to change it to be more fair, not to do the same to other people. Thank you. It's so nice that Americans, before they ask, they say something kind. It's so not Israeli. How do you teach people?
You made a lot of references to God tonight, and I wonder how in secular Beit Midrash you handle the issues with God, and especially with the Talmud, and how you deal with that situation.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I heard all the words. Can I give you this?
It's a question of how you made a lot of references to Ribono Shel Olam and God, and I wonder how in a secular Beit Midrash you deal with issues of God and
Thank you. Yeah, that's also. What's your name? Sarah. I think it might surprise you, but I think secular people, secular Jews, take God much more seriously. We talk about God a lot, and when something is not allowed, it's not allowed. Like when you are growing up in the Orthodox world, you know that some things are not allowed, so you put the tea before the water. and then it's okay. Secular people don't have that experience. So if it's not allowed, you don't do it, and that's it. You don't understand that in fasting, if it's kazait or kadeh, you don't eat anything, and that's it. Or there are so many things that only when I came to Jerusalem I understood, that even with Shlat Shmita. There's Shlat Shmita, there's Derech Hira, and Otzar Bedin, and really, you don't really do Shlat Shmita. And Pesach, you sell it to, like, all these things. Secular people don't have we never heard such a thing. Something is and then it isn't. So unless we have religious people on the Bet Midrash, the talk about God is very naive. There is God. And secular people, it's not that they don't have God, it's that they're not halachic. Many people have religiosity, and you well know that many Orthodox people don't. Not every Orthodox people believes in God. Not every secular people doesn't believe. But the funny thing is that always when we are around the religious people, because many of the Batei Midrash are mixed, they are laughing at us that we are so naive about God. Less Jewish education. You'll earn a lot of money and you'll save a lot of money and the children will be... No, it's not right for America.
I'm Nadav. When do we outgrow the terms Dati and Chiloni, religious and
When?
secular? When do we outgrow the terms Dati and Chiloni, having lived in Israel for many years ourselves and having sort of suffered a lot of, from different, maybe slightly different place, but a lot of what you discussed this evening, the notion that if you're Chiloni, you're approaching the text in almost a sanitized way, as long as there's no asiyah you leave, there's no, many people, don't want to actually do any ritual. And there may be
I wonder how you got to that conclusion after what I said today.
Not with regard to you.
I think we are doing a lot of asiyah.
No, I'm saying, I think there is an attitude among some people, right, that if you study the text, it's a text, it's not asiyah.
I don't know those people. This is the people that exist in the minds of Orthodox people. It's secular people that study in order to live.
Right, so then...
Not in your way, but in order to do asiyah.
I'm actually, what I'm asking is, since what you're saying, I accept that as true, so what is it about the term chiloni and dati that we still need to use those terms? Have we not outgrown them? Because I think what you're saying is that we have outgrown those terms, that's why.
I think I started as Yehudiya. I wasn't Datiya and I wasn't Chilonit. But, first of all, in Israel, Judaism is politicized. So none of my doings, when I got married, it's not considered marriage. When we buried my parents, it wasn't considered burial. When my child did bar mitzvah, it's not considered bar mitzvah. We don't exist, so they call us Chilonim. That's not something that we can outgrow on one side. When in Israel all communities will be allowed to be what they are, then it won't be Dati or Chiloni, it will be Jewish communities. But I think that still, again, and this is ambivalent because what I said before, I really mean that Orthodox communities are saving something that if we would lose, it will be terrible for the world and for us. But at the same time, they believe that this is the only right way and don't let people come into Judaism. Don't let people marry. The majority of Jews in Israel don't marry through the Rabbanut anymore. And so that is called Dati.
I'm afraid I probably misrepresented what I was trying to say. Someone who was
Because you spend too much time in Israel.
Someone who's affiliated with the Masorti community in Israel, right?
Sure.
I felt the same way as what you were saying, is that there's my way or the highway. But specifically, if you are somewhere in that spectrum where you're not necessarily
Orthodox, sorry.
Chiloni,
Okay.
it's that frame that I find is still harmful and maybe not constructive.
Something is not solved, but also with Reform and Conservative Judaism, they look at me and they say, you're really Reform, you just don't know it. That upsets me terribly. Because again, from the other side, people educate me and decide what I'm supposed to be. The spectrum is much longer. Secularity is an ideology. It says that you are responsible. You are the last, you don't have an authority above you. You take advice, you study, you learn, and then you make the decision and you pay. That is simply what secularity is. It's not reform and it's not conservative, although I am fighting for the whole spectrum of Jews to be considered Jews and to respect each other, because I don't even believe that all your life you have to be the same thing. You can be in different parts of your life, more Orthodox or more conservative or more secular, and it's fair. I mean, it's your relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. Nobody is allowed to get into it and to say what's right and what's wrong. So we have a long way to go, but thank you for the hope that we are beyond that.
We give our thanks to Professor Ruth Calderon.